Good evening, friends and fiends. Welcome to A Bit Late. It's me, A Bit Frank, and tonight we are reading a familiar tale if you are familiar with Cinderella. This is the story of the Ash Maiden collected by the Brothers Grimm. I do hope you're in the mood for something you may know. So do get comfy, get cozy, grab some tea or water, whatever you need to settle your mind down for a relaxing time tonight. Although it is not without some gory details, or grim details. This is the Brothers Grimm after all, so you know what to be prepared for. And if you don't, consider this kind of a warning. Well, it's not until later, so don't worry, you might fall asleep before then. Anyway, without further ado from me, let's get into tonight's fairy tale. The Ash Maiden. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then heaven will always protect you, and I will look down on you from heaven and will be near you." Thereupon she closed her eyes and departed. That sounds very peaceful and also sad. Every day the maiden went out to her mother's grave and wept. She remained pious and good. When winter came, the snow had spread a white sheet over the grave, and when the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. I do love how the snow is described as a sheet or a blanket and then it's pulled away in the spring. It's kind of a comfy thought. I might think of my bed sheets like that from now on. Anyway, the woman had brought 2 daughters into the house with her who were beautiful and fair of face but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor child. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" they said. "He who wants to eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." Aren't they going to earn the bread? Ay. They took her pretty clothes away from her and put an old gray bedgown on her and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is," they cried and laughed and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up before daybreak, carry water, light the fires, cook and wash. Cinderella, Cinderella, am I right? Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Ash Maiden. And where is her father in all of this? I mean, he just letting this happen? Oh, here he is. It happened once that the father was going to the fair, and he asked the 2 daughters what he should bring back for them. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "And you, Ash Maiden," he said, "what will you have?" Oh my God. He calls his own daughter Ash Maiden. Ugh. "Father, break off for me the first branch which knocks against your hat on your way home." So he bought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for the 2 daughters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave the 2 daughters the things which they had wished for, and to the Ash Maiden he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Ash Maiden thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch upon it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. It grew, however, and became a handsome tree. Over how much time? I do have to wonder. Years? Decades? Probably years. But it's a fairy tale, it could be weeks. One can never know. Thrice a day Ash Maiden went and sat beneath it, and wept and prayed, and a little white bird always came on the tree. And if Ash Maiden expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. No fairy godmother, but a little white bird. It happened that the king gave a feast, which was to last for 3 days. To it all the beautiful young girls in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose for himself a bride. When the 2 sisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted. They called Ash Maiden and said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the feast at the king's palace." In Perrault's version, the French version, she also styles the hair because she is a renowned hairstylist. Just a fun little fact. Ash Maiden obeyed, but wept because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and she begged her mother to allow her to do so. "You go, Ash Maiden," she said. "You are dusty and dirty and would go to the feast. You have no clothes and shoes and yet would dance." Well, I mean, she could just take a bath, and you and your girls were the ones who took the clothes, as I'm sure you're very much aware, Mother. As, however, Ash Maiden went on asking, the mother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for you. If you have picked them out again in 2 hours, you shall go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves. And at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in and alighted amongst the ashes. And the pigeons nodded with their head and began pick, 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 pick. And the rest began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good grains into the dish. Hardly 1 hour had passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to the mother and was glad and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the feast. So naive. But the mother said, "No, Ash Maiden, you have no clothes and you cannot dance. You would only be laughed at." Which, if she wasn't associated with the mother, I'm sure would be a boon for the mother. Like, oh, look at that girl who can't dance. My daughters are superior, but, whatever. And as Ash Maiden wept at this, the mother said, "If you can pick 2 dishes of lentils out in the ashes for me in 1 hour, you shall go with us." And she thought to herself, that she most certainly cannot do. But when in that time would she procure a dress or procure a bath? I mean, that's probably the point. So cruel. When the mother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils amongst the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds under heaven, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Definitely getting some Vasilisa Baba Yaga vibes here. Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves. And at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads and began pick, 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 pick. And the others began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good seeds into the dishes. And before half an hour was over, they had already finished and all flew out again. Then the maiden carried the dishes to the mother and was delighted and believed that she might now go with them to the feast. But the mother said, "All this will not help you. You will not go with us, for you have no clothes and cannot dance. We should be ashamed of you." I mean, nothing changed. There was just more busy work. Why would anything be different this time, Ash Maiden? Why? Then she turned her back on Ash Maiden and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. As no one was now at home, Ash Maiden went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw over me." Then the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed and went to the feast. Her sisters and the mother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Ash Maiden and believed she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince went to meet her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden and never let go of her hand. And if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with you and bear you company." Oh, he won't leave her alone, for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. That's an odd way of phrasing it. He wanted to see where she lived, and who'd ask for her to marry, I'm sure, but old words. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. So he did accompany her a little bit, and then she busted out of the carriage or off the horse or whatever. Interesting. The king's son waited until her father came, and then he told him that the stranger maiden had leapt into the pigeon house. The old man thought, can it be Ash Maiden? And they had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces, but no one was inside it, obviously. And when they got home, Maiden lay in her dirty clothes among the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece. For Maiden had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house and had run to the little hazel tree. There she had taken off her beautiful clothes and laid them on the grave, and the bird had taken them away again. Then she had placed herself in the kitchen amongst the ashes in her gray gown. She must really not want anything to do with the prince. I mean, that's a lot of effort. Next day, when the feast began afresh, and her parents and her sisters had gone once more, Maiden went to the hazel tree and said, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw over me." Okay, so she wants to go, though. Then the bird threw down a much more beautiful dress than on the preceding day. And when Maiden appeared at the feast in this dress, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The king's son had waited until she came and instantly took her by the hand and danced with no one but her. So she never even gets a chance to eat, poor girl. When the others came and invited her, he said, "She is my partner." When evening arrived, she wished to leave, and the king's son followed her and wanted to see into which house she went. But she sprang away from him and into the garden behind the house. Therein stood a beautiful tall tree on which hung the most magnificent pears. She clambered like a squirrel so nimbly between the branches that the king's son did not know where she had gone. He waited until her father came and said to him, "The stranger maiden has escaped from me, and I believe she has climbed up the pear tree." The father thought, "Can it be Maiden?" And he had an axe brought and cut down the tree, but no one was on it. That seems like an extreme reaction, cutting down the fruit tree to see if there's someone in it. Like, why not just look or shake it, or, I don't know, climb up it as well, or send someone up it as well? Just thinking of all those wasted pears. And when they got into the kitchen, Maiden lay there amongst the ashes as usual, for she had jumped down the other side of the tree and had taken the beautiful dress to the bird on the little hazel tree and had put on her gray gown. On the third day, when the parents and sisters had gone away, Maiden went once more to her mother's grave and said to the little tree, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw over me." And now the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had yet had, and the slippers were golden. And when she went to the feast in the dress, no one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with only her, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, "She is my partner." When evening came, Maiden wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son, however, had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden's left slipper remained sticking. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty and all golden and covered in pitch. So devious. Next morning he went with it to the father and said to him, "No one shall be my wife but she whose foot this golden slipper fits." Then were the two sisters glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe in her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by. But she could not get her big toe into it, for the shoe was too small for her. So she put it on heel first. It's a little confusing. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. When you are queen, you will have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. She is dedicated to her mother's vision and words and her own potential future security, but ow. Then he took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. He didn't recognize her at all as not being the right person. Like, do dresses really make that much of a difference? It says nowhere that this was a masquerade. They were, however, obliged to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." Then he looked at her foot, finally, and saw how the blood was streaming from it. He turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put the shoe on. Then this one went into her chamber and got her toes safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large. I always did wonder how they cut their feet without the prince noticing. Oh, they took it into their own bedrooms. Sneaky. So her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut off a bit of your heel. When you are queen, you will have no more need to go on foot." Ouch. The maiden cut off a bit of her heel and forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. But when they passed by the hazel tree, 2 little pigeons sat on it and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." Again, he didn't notice it was the wrong girl. He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe and how it had stained her white stocking. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home again. "This is also not the right one," he said. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There's only a little stunted kitchen girl which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." He is so cruel. He disowns his own daughter. It is his daughter. Oh my God. And why can't she be the bride? Anyway, the king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." "Well, let her take a bath." Jeez. He insisted on it, and Ash Maiden had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean. There you go, problem solved. And then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fitted like a glove. Almost like it was made for it, right? And when she rose up and the king's son looked at her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him and cried, "That is the true bride." So he didn't even look at the other girls' faces. Oh my God. He's pretty dense, right? Like, pretty friggin' dense. The mother and the 2 sisters were terrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Ash Maiden on his horse and rode away with her. As they passed by the hazel tree, the 2 white doves cried, turn and peep, no blood is in the shoe. The shoe was not too small for her, the true bride rides with you." And when they had cried that, the 2 came flying down and placed themselves on Ash Maiden's shoulder, one on the right, the other on the left, and remained sitting there. When the wedding with the king's son had to be celebrated, the 2 false sisters came and wanted to get in favor with Ash Maiden and share her good fortune. Should have been nicer to her, girls. When the betrothed couple went to the church, the elder was at the right side and the younger was at the left, and the pigeons pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterwards, as they came back, the elder was on the left and the younger was on the right, and the pigeons pecked out the other eye of each. Ooh, double eye pecks. And thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. The end. Interesting, the story does not end with happily ever after, but it ends with the moral about the wicked sisters. And we don't even know if Ash Maiden was excited to go with the prince. It doesn't say she lived happily, but that's something for us to infer or dream about as we drift off to sleep or focus on something other than crazy, weird, pestering thoughts. Or maybe this adds to those pestering thoughts. I'm unsure. If it does, I'm so sorry. Try another story, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, thank you for keeping me company tonight. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Now, off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again. And until then, stay spooky, my friends. Good night.